ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning into The Scoop. I'm your host, Frank Chaparro, Director of Special Projects at The Block. Very excited for today's guest. We've been trying to get this going for a while, and we're long overdue for a relatively Bitcoin-focused show. Willem Schroé, thanks for joining the program. He's joining us over at Botanix Labs. How are you doing, sir? Give us a rundown of what you're working on, how you got into crypto, and then we'll dig into it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Frank. Happy to be here and bring some of the Bitcoin stories. Nice to meet you all. I'm Willem. I have a bit of a mathematics background. Became 13th national championship in Belgium. Then ended up doing electrical engineering, researching into cryptography. So researched in authenticated encryption. That was actually my first entry in the crypto space. I actually saw Bitcoin in my cryptography classes. Ended up working in chemicals for a while. Moved to Saudi Arabia, then moved to the US. Went to Harvard there first Boston and then New York. And I think around 2 years ago, now is when I came up with the idea for Botanix. So Botanix is a second layer EVM on Bitcoin. The whole thing runs on Bitcoin, but it is fully EVM equivalent. And the idea was basically still exactly the same. We realized that Bitcoin is this pure, decentralized, secure money. Like Michael Saylor would say, best money ever made. And then realized that there's almost no applications on top of it. There's very little you can actually do with your Bitcoin. And then realized that the EVM might be the winning virtual machine. So the Ethereum virtual machine, of course, is extremely powerful. You can build so many different applications on top of it, and in our mind is the winning virtual machine. So we wanted to bring that to Bitcoin, and so we're fully building that second layer EVM on Bitcoin, fully EVM equivalent. It basically means anything you can do on top of Ethereum, you can do on top of Botanix. And so think about, you'll have the Bitcoin in your MetaMask, you'll pay the gas fees in Bitcoin. You can copy paste any smart contract you have and basically deploy it on Botanix, and then you can use Bitcoin for it. So that's what we're building. Been on testnet since November and getting closer to mainnet. That's a short intro.
How would you break down the landscape for Bitcoin layer 2s?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when we started off 2 years ago, there was almost no Bitcoin layer 2s. You had Rootstock and you had Stacks. Now Rootstock is not fully EVM equivalent, and then Stacks is running on Clarity, and so there were not that many Bitcoin layer 2s. And then I think since November, over the last 6 months, this whole space exploded, and now you have hundreds of different Bitcoin layer 2s. I think in general, there's a few ways to break it down. There's Bitcoin layer 2s that are actually built on Ethereum, so using the OP stack. So you take the OP stack and then you use Wrap Bitcoin, for example, as your gas fees, and so they're more Ethereum layer 2s actually. And then you've got a lot of different layer 1s that have pivoted towards becoming Bitcoin layer 2s or calling themselves Bitcoin layer 2s. And then you have what we are doing. So actually fully connected to Bitcoin, not to anything else. And the whole thing runs on Bitcoin. And so under the hood, there's a lot of different technologies that have basically been developed over the last few months. So you've got what we are doing, what's called the spider chain. So the spider chain is a quite novel layer 2 design that's capable to be actually fully decentralized as a layer 2. So that's what separates us, comes with different trade-offs. Then, of course, you have the BitVM. So BitVM is a paper that came out in October, allows for random computations on Bitcoin. It's still not fully yet clear how to actually build a layer 2 or a bridge with BitVM. There's a bunch of different proposals with all different trade-offs and different downsides, like BitVM2, BitVMX, and a few other different projects. And then that's a little bit kind of it. Like the different ZK rollups on Bitcoin will use BitVM, but we all know on Bitcoin actually you cannot really verify ZK proofs, there's not that much you can actually do on Bitcoin. You have multisigs and you have time locks, and Taproot allows for these interesting novel designs, but there's very little that you can actually do on Bitcoin. But generally, very excited about the space. Like the possibilities and the excitement, I think, are fully correct. This is $1 trillion market, and there's almost no applications there, and so this is massive.
Why now? Why was there this sort of, not quite a Cambrian explosion? I don't think it was that big. There's probably like, instead of there being 2 projects, maybe there's 10 or 12. Why? What was the catalyst behind it, though? Did something specific happen that reawakened maybe the Bitcoin community? I'm sure it had to some extent have something to do with the innovations we saw around Bitcoin tied NFTs. But was there something else at play? Maybe just a mix of price, some other things? Give us the recipe.
Yeah, I think the why now has a lot of different ways to look at it. You can look at it from a cultural way, from a technological way. And so for the culture way, I think what happened in 2017, 2018, it was really hard to build on Bitcoin. And so most of the development activity basically moved out of Bitcoin. And so throughout the years, 2018, 2019, 2020, very little was actually built because all the developers went away from Bitcoin. They might still like Bitcoin, they might still hold it, but they developed applications, for example, like on Ethereum or other layer ones. And then I think everybody always wanted to come back, and I think now more the newer class are coming back to Bitcoin. So I think that's a normal shift in the culture that you see. I think the second is a technology development. I think the Taproot upgrade in 2020 or 2021 made a big difference. Like what we are doing with the Spider Chain is not possible without Taproot. And I think generally a lot of people, a lot of founders that like myself that started before ordinals became a thing, basically saw all that development activity happening on Ethereum. And as a Bitcoiner by heart, I was like, okay, I want to actually do this on Bitcoin. And so you had, of course, Casey Rodarmor. He wrote Ordinal Theory more or less the same time when I wrote the Spider Chain white paper. And there's a few other teams as well, like ZK rollup teams that also originated then. It was basically you saw the activity happening on Ethereum, and you wanted to bring that back to Bitcoin. And then the majority of the action basically came after Ordinals. So Ordinals was really the big opener to everyone in the space. Whoa, actually now we can actually do something on Bitcoin. You can have NFTs on Bitcoin. And so suddenly you go from like almost 0 applications to NFTs on Bitcoin. And so the Ordinals, I think, was the big breakthrough for most people in the space that got them back excited about Bitcoin. So those are the 3 different developments that I saw in the space, with Ordinals by far the actual big first application.
Kind of, I mean, to an extent, Ordinals were the catalyst, as I said, right? They kind of, got people rethinking about the capacity, the power of what Bitcoin can do. But there's still a long way to go, right? When you think about how we can get layer 2s on Bitcoin to work, what's missing? What's still sort of, what are some of the technical impediments that still need to be sort of sorted out?
Yeah, I think there's over the last few months, because of all these Bitcoin layer 2s, there might be a misconception that it's actually easy to build a Bitcoin layer 2, but it's absolutely not. Like Bitcoin is extremely, extremely hard to build on. The UTXO model is not easy. You basically end up with a bunch of different issues once you start building a layer 2 on a UTXO model. And so I think today we haven't really seen that actual Bitcoin layer 2 on mainnet with a fully functioning end-to-end product. I think at Botanix we're very close, like we're a month and a half from mainnet, which I think will change a lot of different things. Like once we are on mainnet, and you can actually bring your Ethereum applications and your EVM applications back to Bitcoin. Outside of that, I think the design space for layer 2s are still very limited. You have BitVM, you have spider chains, and that's a little bit about it. Now, of course, there's a lot of hope that OPCAT, which is a soft fork of Bitcoin, might happen. And so OPCAT has a lot of different possibilities. It's basically, it allows for governance, which allows a lot of different restrictions on where the Bitcoin can move to. And this would allow, for example, to have ZK rollups, or at least like a ZK proof in small essence on Bitcoin. So that's gaining more and more traction, although Bitcoin moves really, really, really slow. So it's really hard to know if OPCAT will happen and when OPCAT will happen.
There's a lot of developments across the market. I wonder what you think about. You have maybe Bitcoiners looking to expand, while it's at the same time ETH folks are also maybe looking at Bitcoin. So you're getting almost a convergence, right? What do you think about Starknet's newly announced Bitcoin layer 2 thing?
Yeah. No, I know they've been working on it for quite a while, so I knew it was coming, but absolutely love it. Like, when you think about it, we actually want the whole world to run on Bitcoin as the money. And you need a bunch of different layer 2s for that. Like, if you actually want to build a whole financial system and a whole market with a huge amount of applications on Bitcoin, you don't need one layer 2, you need hundreds. And so I'm very happy that they massively are pushing forward ZKs, and with OPCAT, basically trying to develop different applications using the soft fork OPCAT. So yeah, absolutely love it. Very excited about it. And actually, I'm not surprised they're doing this, because like over the last few months, I've talked with a huge amount of Ethereum applications and Ethereum dev founders. And there's a lot of Bitcoiners that absolutely love Bitcoin and would love to do things on Bitcoin, but they couldn't. And so these developments suddenly open up the space for everyone who has actually been building an Ethereum application but would want to do it on Bitcoin. And so actually I see a massive influx back, coming back to Bitcoin.
What type of applications would do best on Bitcoin in terms of the categories of applications? Is there something about Bitcoin's characteristics that might lend itself to it being preferable for DEXs, or for gaming applications, or for things like this?
Yeah, no, very good question. I think with Bitcoin being pure, decentralized, and so secure, I think it lends itself perfectly to for the DeFi space. And so when I think about Bitcoin DeFi, it makes so much sense. Like, you have a lot of wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum, and that's where you, of course, take the wrapped Bitcoin risk. Not everyone in the world wants to do that. If you could do the whole DeFi around wrapped Bitcoin, but you could actually do it on Bitcoin, this is massively bigger. Besides that, I know so many people, especially from the Bitcoin space, would want to lend against their Bitcoin. Like how you take on Aave a loan against your wrapped Bitcoin. Like, now you can do that actually natively on Bitcoin. And there's just an absolutely massive market for it. Besides that, I think you have Tether has been wanting to launch a stablecoin on Bitcoin for 10 years. And so 10 years later, we still don't have a stablecoin on Bitcoin. And so that on its own is already a massive market. And so I think the whole of DeFi makes so much sense to actually do it on Bitcoin. Taking loans against your Bitcoin, you'll have Bitcoin yield, because all the gas fees, for example, like on Botanix, all the gas fees are paid in Bitcoin. So that gives you native Bitcoin yield. And so there's so many different applications that have an absolutely massive market. I think gaming is probably not the short-term market, just because, for example, like a Botanix, we run on like 9-second blocks, so not super fast. So you don't have that super fast user experience that you would need for gaming applications. And the reason for that is because you have Bitcoin on the base layer that runs on 10-minute blocks. So to go from 10-minute blocks to like 0.1 second blocks, that is too big of a jump. You can do that on layer 3s on Botanix, for example. Like, once we are live, you can copy paste the OP stack and launch a Bitcoin layer 3, like super fast, like in a week. Right? And so I think gaming applications make way more sense for like layer 3s, but I think on the layer 2 for Bitcoin is where Bitcoin DeFi will shine. And think like perp DEXs. You would want to leverage Bitcoin 2x, 5x on Bitcoin. It's just a massive market. I think, especially still like in Ethereum, DeFi, wrapped Bitcoin plays a very, very big role. And so all these things you can now bring back to Bitcoin.
What does a Bitcoin native ecosystem look like in 10 years?
That's a very good question. So can I expand it longer than 10 years?
100 years.
Exactly. I always like to think, because that's also how I started. I like to think 100 years ahead, like think 100 years ahead. Okay, we're in 21, 24 then. I can see a world where the whole world runs on Bitcoin as the money. You'll have DEXs. DEXs are better stock exchanges. I can see a lot of tokens being actually stocks and securities. And so you have permissionless stock markets. You can buy all these stocks with like Bitcoin from anywhere in the world, open 24/7. You can have perp DEXs. You can take loans. So a better financial system actually fully running on Bitcoin. So I can see actually the current traditional financial system, park that, and you have that whole new financial system that is being built, but actually using Bitcoin as the money. And so I can see, this whole world playing out 100 years from now, where you will actually do everything on chain, but using Bitcoin as the money. That's a little bit what we're working towards.
So was Ethereum just a test net, or where is Ethereum in that? In the year 2124.
I don't know. That's a very good question. I think there's still a lot of people that believe in the multi-chain world. I believe more that everything aggregates towards like a single pool, and so I can see everything aggregating towards Bitcoin. I do think that the EVM is by far the winning software layer. I actually compare the virtual machine technology battle a lot with like Windows in the 80s. There's only room for a few different operating systems, or in this sense, virtual machines. And so the EVM is so far ahead and is so powerful. Where Ethereum itself will be, or the role, I don't know. That is hard to predict, I think. But I think everything, if you can always choose either do it on Bitcoin or do it on Ethereum, and Bitcoin is a bigger market, it makes sense to actually do it on Bitcoin, because that's $1 trillion market.
What potential attack vectors are most likely given the protocol design? And what are you looking to do to improve security around some of those areas?
That's a very good question. Like, there's nothing more secure as a cold wallet on the Bitcoin base layer. That is absolutely more secure, and it will always be the most secure. Once you go to second layers, you take, of course, trade-offs. And so for the spider chain, we want to be absolutely decentralized, where you can have 10,000 to 100,000 full nodes distributed between everyone, where everyone can run a full node. But it also means that you take an additional trust assumption, in the sense that you assume that 2/3 of all those nodes are actually safe. So very similar to like in Ethereum on the layer 1. You basically assume that 2/3 or the majority of all the Ethereum nodes don't collude together. I think we've seen it play out, and Ethereum is extremely secure today. Eventually that might play out on Bitcoin layer 2s, but in the initial phases, when there's not that many nodes yet, those are some of the trade-offs that you actually make.
What do you think the audience looks like, or the target user? Bitcoiners some, not all, can be a bit extreme in sort of the thinking and thinking through its purity, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word. Makes me think of the sailor quote of "There is no second best."
Yeah,
he might argue there is no second. There is no need for secondary layers, as it were. Or are they not your audience? Who's sort of the target?
Yeah. No, very good question. I think it comes from both sides. I think on the Bitcoin side is very diverse. Some people love ordinals, some people hate ordinals. And likewise, some people will love getting that Bitcoin yield on a second layer. Other people won't. Some people would love to loan against their Bitcoin on the second layer. Other people won't. And I think that's the Bitcoin side. But I think actually a lot of different users, from the non-Bitcoin side will actually also use this. And it's very similar to what we've seen in Ordinals. Ordinals basically opened up a lot of people's cold wallets. Like you might have been very active in Solana, but you might have still like a small portion of Bitcoin in your cold wallet. And then Ordinals happens, and the money you're using to actually buy those ordinals comes from your Bitcoin cold wallet. So basically all this sleeping capital can like wake up. And I think looking at the ordinal space, I think 70% of the ordinals people came from outside of Bitcoin. And then probably like 30% or something came from within the more ideological Bitcoin space. Like originally Bitcoiners were very degen themselves, like very, very long time ago. There were a lot of different games and gambling sites as well in like 2013, etc. And so they've been waiting for something to do with their Bitcoin. And then, of course, ordinals happened. So now finally you can do something. So I actually think the actual users will come from all over the cryptocurrency space. Everyone who has Bitcoin on a cold wallet or has Bitcoin in general might be inclined to actually use this.
There is a degen reawakening within the Bitcoin community. Degens are making a comeback. They need things to do. I think when you think about the future of how capital markets will look, the extent to which crypto will kind of reshape the way, global commerce and trade occurs. One word that often comes to mind is tokenization, right? It's something that every layer one wants to play a role in, whether it's Avalanche working with JP Morgan, Securitize working with BlackRock on BITL, which is based on Ethereum. How do you view the future of bringing assets on chain and how Bitcoin might play a role in that, and why it might offer a superior alternative base layer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I fully believe in that. Like, I think everything in the world will be tokenized. It's a way more efficient world. I think what holds back real tokenization in the world is, of course, the regulatory picture. Like, once you go to the real world, then all the different laws come into place. But still, it's a way more efficient world. But to answer your question on why I think it makes the most sense to do it on Bitcoin is because you know that Bitcoin will never go away anymore. If you launch it on Bitcoin, that is going to stay there. Besides that, it is the biggest capital market or the most amount of money that's actually available in the whole crypto space. And so if you want to approach the biggest market, then you would want to do it on Bitcoin. Now, maybe later on, it might make sense and you say, like, there's way too much competition in the Bitcoin space. Let's do it somewhere else. But that's why I think it makes sense to do it on Bitcoin.
What do you think it's going to take for experimentation like that to happen for tokenized money market funds on Bitcoin? What is the path to that reality?
I think what the path is, there will be a small game theory playing out in the world. I think some jurisdictions will be faster than other ones and will allow tokenized assets to exist on chain. Which will be like the first trials. And then I don't mean like the small trials, right, that we've seen, but like the bigger ones, like actually like massive money markets. And if that plays out well and it generates a premium towards what you would expect normally without the tokenization, that's basically when the game theory starts playing out. And that's when other countries will start to look. And ideally, I know like the regulatory picture always runs behind, but that's, I think, what's needed. Some countries will take an earlier jump, will tokenize, and I assume that will take a big premium towards other non-tokenized assets.
Walk me through the rest of the year for the firm, for the project, what you're most excited about, and where people can learn more.
No, absolutely. So yeah, I think over the next year, this will be incredibly exciting. Think like all your favorite applications or things you do on Ethereum or Arbitrum or anywhere else, and think about now that actually doing it on Bitcoin. And so we're going to mainnet in a month and a half with a full-blown ecosystem. So think about a lot of your big favorite applications. We've already announced quite a bit. There's a lot more in the works in the backend. So think about your liquidity model. Think about your Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. Think about lending, borrowing protocols. Think about liquid staking. Think about restaking. Think about the whole DeFi picture. Think about perp dexes for ordinals. Leveraging your Bitcoin 2x, 5x. So a huge amount of applications will be there. And I think a second interesting part as well is like once you have an EVM on Bitcoin, you can use an EVM bridge like a layer 0, for example. You bring your Botanix Bitcoin and you bring that to Ethereum. And now suddenly you have a decentralized wrapped Bitcoin using an EVM bridge. And so like a layer 0 can basically bring Bitcoin to the rest of all the other layer 1s, and so I think that will happen as well. Now there's a strong alternative towards for wrapped Bitcoin. But yeah, I'm personally mostly excited about taking loans against your Bitcoin-backed stablecoins on Bitcoin, and the whole DeFi ecosystem, Bitcoin Yield. There's a bunch of different applications you can do on Bitcoin.
Bitcoin-backed stablecoin will be a huge unlock. I mean, if you think about what kicked off DeFi summer in whatever year it was post-COVID, 2020, 2021 was the growth of USDC underpinned most of that as almost the unlocking mechanism of DeFi. That's a cool one if it works.
Yeah, I think if you're listening to this, I think definitely stay up to date. Once we go to mainnet, we have like at least 10 to 15 projects, new founding teams that are launching their tokens on top of us. You'll be able to use them in DEXs and others. And so, there's going to be a lot of fun the first few months after mainnet. So there's going to be a full-blown ecosystem to play around.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Frank.
And where can people follow you or reach out if they want to?
Yes. So we're on Twitter under Botanix Labs. It's like you can recognize it with the logo. Perfect. Here. And that's from there you can link to like the Discord or like the website and stay up to date.
Thank you very much.